All right, so back to more depositions for Patsy Ramsey kind of speaking. Really, this entire time, it's been an instance or a case where a Mr. Wolf has sort of like, he's interested or he has filed libel or defamation suits against the Ramseys. And so the attorney for the Ramseys has instructed Patsy not to say certain things or he's going to jump in. And he's been doing a lot of that more and more and more because I think that she's starting to step closer and closer to things that she should not be saying to incriminate herself. So here we go.
We're on video record at 11:07.
Okay. At this point, I'd like to move on to another topic area, but just for the purposes of making a record, Mr. Wood earlier in the deposition said that he was going to object to or ask to strike statements that I had made prefatory to a question that I asked Mrs. Ramsey concerning the authorship of the ransom note. And just for the record, I object to any attempt to have that stricken from the record. And that's all I want to say with respect to that. Mr. Wood, if you want to add anything to that.
Next question.
Okay. Now I'm just going to go into I'm going to ask for some clarification of things that are in the book, things that I didn't understand. I'm going to turn your attention to page 378. It's chapter. In fact, I can let you look at that. There are two statements there. In fact, Mrs. Ramsey, if you'll just give me your book, I'll just quickly highlight it. I'm sorry about not having done this beforehand. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'd like you to read the highlighted portions of on page 378 in your book, The Death of Innocence. That's the paperback edition.
The Boulder grand jury said no to an indictment.
And then the next statement that I've highlighted.
The grand jury's secret decision.
Do you have any personal knowledge as to whether or not the grand jury did, in fact, make a decision based on that statement?
Well, the district attorney, I believe, made a public statement that said there would not be an indictment.
Okay. But there's a reference here to the grand jury's secret decision.
Why?
Do you have any knowledge of a secret decision by the grand jury? Any personal knowledge? Are you referring to that?
Well, I think all of the grand jury information is under wraps or under seal or something.
Okay, so, but do you know whether or not the grand jury, in fact, made a decision in your case?
Just going from what the district attorney said, that there was no indictment.
Okay. But this doesn't indicate, the reason I'm asking you this question is that, all right, I'll withdraw. Is it Patrick Furman? Was he an attorney of yours at one point?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Were you aware that Mr. Furman made a statement that was published in the Boulder papers to the effect that there was a rumor that the grand jury had taken a straw poll and had decided not to indict?
Object to the form of the question.
Okay.
And I think you've inadvertently perhaps made reference to the wrong lawyer.
All right.
But if you have a statement to show her, that might be helpful.
Let's do. I don't have that statement. I'm just asking her if she's heard that.
I am not aware of a statement by Mr. Furman in the paper.
Then I'll ask you by any of your attorneys.
No, I'm not.
To the effect that the grand jury, that there was a rumor that the grand jury had taken a secret straw poll and had decided or voted not to indict.
Talking about public statements, not anything the attorney said to
No attorney. I don't want you to reveal anything that is an attorney.
No, I'm not aware of such a statement.
Okay, because so the statement, the grand jury secret decision, is not referring to any personal knowledge that you have about what on in the grand jury room with respect to any decision to indict or not indict. Is that correct?
I think that adjective was used just referring to the grand jury as a whole does everything behind closed doors.
Okay. All right, so it's just a figure of speech. Is that correct?
Actually, I did not write this section.
Oh, okay.
John wrote this. You might want to ask him this
All right,
question.
very good. Thank you very much. All right, now, there's an incident in the book on page 191, which you might remember. It's fairly lengthy, and I just want you to review it. I'm not asking you to read it. It involves the alarm system that apparently failed and when you came home. I think you were in your home in Charlevoix, was that it? And it's the next to last paragraph on 191. If you could just look at that, just to refresh your memory generally.
Where it says John put in an alarm
Oh, the system, yeah.
And you can read any that you need to put that
Yeah,
in
just-
context.
I was trying to see if Patsy was at all aware or would be aware, because this interview is in '01, trying to see, and she passed away in '06. The grand jury's decision, with their true decision, wasn't unsealed till 2013. But I'm wondering if at all, when she wrote that in her book, the grand jury's secret decision, if she at all was aware in any way, whether by notification, formally or informally, that they did want to indict, but they weren't allowed to because of the DA's decision. I wonder if she was aware of that, but just wasn't able to say that publicly. And of course she wouldn't be.
Okay.
Do you remember that incident?
About putting the alarm system in?
No, but that incident where, your feelings with respect to security and whatever. It's not an incident. I'm going to refer to another part of the book in a minute. I'm just simply your state of mind and security systems.
I guess I'm unclear about what you're asking.
All right, what I'm going to ask you is this. What do you know whether or not first of all, when you were living in Boulder at the time of the death of your daughter, did you have a security system in your home?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Was that a security system that you used at the time you went out that night, the December 25th, as you explain it in your book when you went out visiting people? Did you have the security alarm on that night?
No, we did not.
Okay. When you moved to Atlanta, did you install a security system in your homes, any of them?
Yes, we did.
Did you have a security system in the home that's been identified as the Atlanta, not mansion, but I don't have the address, the house where John was assaulted in May of I think it was 2001? Do you know if there was a security alarm in that facility, that home in Atlanta?
There was, when we moved in, we installed a very elaborate security system. Then subsequent to that, we had some extensive remodeling done,
Right.
and the security system was dismantled and was subsequently reinstalled.
Who was in charge of in Boulder with turning the security?
So you're telling me that if you have a knack for installing complex security systems, and every day except for Christmas, you would have left it off. You would have just decided to leave it off because conveniently you leaving it off that day would have allowed you to deny. And this is 5 years, something like that. In '01, this is 5 years, something like that, after JonBenet's death. So, of course, this would allow you to deny. We don't know if the security system was triggered or not, but this would allow you to deny that, or it would allow you to state that there is a plausibility of an intruder coming in, which is fine. Of course, no problem there. But we do know that you guys have a knack, from what you just said, of installing security systems. And so that would lead me to believe that it's possible that you actually legitimately had the security system on the 25th of December, when you guys returned back from whatever party that you were at. So why would you have it? And I know you forget, but most of the times when I had my security system in my home, I rarely ever remember forgetting to turn it on. I mean, I actually got a boost out of turning it on because I felt protected.
System on or off. Was that you or was that John? Normally.
We normally did not use the security system in Boulder
And why was that?
because we felt safe in Boulder.
In Atlanta, I believe the security system was not on when John was assaulted. Do you know if that was true or not?
I don't believe that it was on.
All right. Do you know why it wasn't on?
I don't know why it wasn't on.
Were you concerned that it hadn't been left on? And
You
that your
assume it
husband-
was not dismantled at that time?
Well, yeah, actually, I ought to go back to that because you did mention dismantlement. I'm sorry.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
giving you, I'm trying to be lenient with you. We've had a few back and forth during it, but I had a lot of trouble understanding what this has to do with Chris Wolf and the allegations in his claim or the defenses to this case.
Okay. Do you want me to explain?
If you feel like you need to, it might be helpful.
All right, fine.
Well, you just asked me to explain. The heck are you talking about? You said it doesn't have anything to do with anything, so let me explain. Look, if you feel like you need to, well, yeah, since clearly you don't get it, and clearly you're trying to stop me, number one. Number two, you guys are buying security systems to not elaborate security systems at that to not turn them on. You expect me to legitimately believe that? Nah, I get it. Sometimes when you're in safe neighborhoods and things of that nature, sometimes you get a little bit careless. Yes. But to never use your security system? Okay. And then to go to another state, to be mindful, to move from Colorado, to be mindful, to install a security system, then to say, we're not going to use this one either. Come on, man. Y'all playing games.
Oftentimes, a jury or a trier of fact, as the case may be, is allowed to consider something other than forensic evidence in determining whether somebody is involved in a crime or not, or just in any event. And sometimes it's the demeanor of the witness on the stand, whether a witness is in fact telling the truth or not telling the truth, or whether there's inconsistencies in the story which are such that a jury would have a right to draw what we call an inference, and from that inference what we call consciousness of guilt. So the theory is that if a person is thought to be not telling the truth, or simply his story is so implausible or inconsistent that it indicates that there is a consciousness of guilt, which a jury can use, at least in a criminal case, to determine guilt, or can't be an element in it. I hope I'm stating the law correctly. And that is one of the areas that I'm going into in the deposition for the purpose. Depositions, from what I understand, Lynn, from the federal rules, allow you to go into areas where you might be able to impeach a witness later on. And so sometimes the questions don't appear to be relevant except for the impeachment purposes. So that's one of the reasons why I'm going into this area.
Well, I'm not going to make a statement about whether I agree or disagree with your statement of the law. It's your right to make that statement. I understand impeachment. I understand that it has to go to a relevant and material issue. I have grave doubts about whether an incident in 2001 that occurred in the Ramsey's home here, where Mr. Ramsey was assaulted when he got in and found someone that had broken in and stolen a number of items from his home, has anything whatsoever to do from a relevancy standpoint or from an impeachment standpoint with the issues raised in Chris Wolf's libel lawsuit. But I'm going to let her answer the question because I don't think, it's one of those things that we don't need to come back and do later.
Okay.
You can get the answer,
All right.
but I just think that,
I
if you just keep in mind that I think you're pushing the envelope here, if
All
not
right.
going beyond it.
For the purposes, in case you raise an objection, I'll just simply explain just
I'm
very
going to let her answer it, and you
all right,
do what
briefly,
you got to do.
why I'm doing this.
So you're doing me a favor. Number one. Number two, the energy for Patsy has shifted. She's no longer feeling threatened. She's a little bit more relaxed at this point. She's no longer doing like this. Her shoulders are no longer up here, but her shoulders are down here. And this is a little bit more relaxed. Her motions are not as stiff as they once were. She's a little bit more relaxed because of, no doubt, because that confidence is coming from the attorney. She feels protected by the attorney. Maybe they've talked about something prior to the break or during the break, and he kind of reassured her of, hey, we're going to take care of this in this way. We're going to protect you in this way. So she came back in with a renewed sense of being protected.
What it is about the security system that I find intriguing in this case. And it's the fact that there were concerns expressed in the book about the security of the Ramsey family and the fact that the Ramsey family felt insecure. And naturally, one of the areas that you would think would concern a family is the fact that on a night when their daughter had been murdered, the security system had not been working.
Oh.
And if there was any...
I believe in the book.
No.
Hold on.
Sorry.
This is where we don't need to go.
Okay.
The security system was not turned on. And I think if you are familiar with the book, they made it very clear why they didn't use it in Boulder.
No. I get that. I guess what I'm saying is that if you feel so unsafe after your daughter was murdered and you didn't use the security system, I guess my next question would be, if you felt so safe then, but now you feel like this kind of goes to the question that he was asking before. You said you felt unsafe when Burke was going to, or, you felt unsafe for your son. But when Burke was being transported between states, he didn't have no security. Why is that? Number one. Number two. And so we're rounding back into this issue of security. You said that you felt unsafe moving forward because of this. Now I need to ask you another question about safety. If you felt so unsafe, then why are y'all not moving forward after JonBenet's death? Why are y'all not putting on your security system, which is an element of safety? That's a legitimate concern.
The point is, you're asking about an incident that occurred, you say, in 2001, where Mr. Ramsey came home while his house was under renovation with construction workers there and found someone in his home stealing the items, and there was a physical altercation. And you're asking about the security system here in 2001. And I'm just simply letting you know, Darnay, I'm going to let her answer questions about that. But I think you are over the line on relevancy to the claims and defenses in this case. But I'm trying to be lenient because I want you to have the opportunity to push the envelope out. But I would just ask you to keep in mind that we are stretching this, in my view. And I would ask you just,
I'm trying to
no
enlarge...
explanations are needed. Your theory of the case is not needed. Just ask the question. I'm going to let her answer.
I'm just trying to enlarge the envelope so that you see that the envelope isn't being stretched.
The envelope to be enlarged is supposed to be under the rules by you making a showing of good cause and getting a court order.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to prevent you from having
I'm letting her answer
to go in front of it. Okay.
Just ask the question.
The reason why the lawyer doesn't need an explanation is because he doesn't legitimately know where Mr. Hoffman is going. He doesn't legitimately know, but he's scared that it might turn into something. He's now recognized that Mr. Hoffman is good at bringing something up and catching you in something, but he just doesn't know where it's going to go. And so he has to put forth the claim that we were uncertain, we were unsure, we didn't know, just to kind of put some doubt in the transcript on the record. That's why he doesn't need an explanation. But no, Mr. Hoffman is like, no, I'm going to respond so that we're clear and so that we clear up any uncertainty as to why I'm going down this line. Very smart.
All right. Mrs. Ramsey, were you at all concerned the fact that your husband was attacked in your Atlanta home? I don't know if you have one or two. Atlanta home, and the security system had not been turned on?
I object to the form of the question.
Okay.
You may answer the question.
I
Why are you objecting to the form of the question? Who gives a crap? It's a how you have not yet given us how you would like the questions framed. How should we be asking a question? Were you fearful in any way that your husband got attacked? Oh, I object to the form of the question. Why?
was concerned when I learned that my husband had been physically attacked. Yes.
Were you concerned that the alarm system had not been turned on?
I did not know. I was not at the home when all this happened, so I didn't know whether the alarm system was on or not.
Okay. Do you know, were you told by anyone if the alarm system was or wasn't on at the time of Mr. Ramsey's assault?
I don't believe that it was on. You'd have to ask him that.
All right. But that's your belief, is that correct?
Yes. It was midday.
There was also, I believe, in your book, you described an incident where you came back to your home in Charlevoix, and everyone was waiting in front of the house because I think Mr. Ramsey, in fact, describes this incident.
What page?
I don't know if I marked that. What I may have to do is go back to this question after lunch, because I think that this may be one page that I didn't mark, and I'll go back to it. I was going to ask her if she recalled that particular event without having to reference it to the book. If she needs to
Which
look at the
event
book.
is that?
In Charlevoix, there, I believe, is an incident that you recount where something happened to the alarm system. And I believe you and your mother and maybe other members of your family were waiting nervously outside for the alarm system people to arrive, and they didn't. And I believe John went looking through the, I believe it's the Charlevoix home, to see if there was an intruder. And I was just curious as to how that alarm system had failed, that security system.
I don't recall that part in the
Okay.
book.
Well, after the lunch break, I just may bring you back very briefly to ask you if you have any memory of that, by referring to it in your book there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you ever, at any time, make a statement to anyone other than your attorneys that you had written the phrase, Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, which had appeared on one of the pads that the police found in your home and has been referred to as the so-called practice ransom note?
I mean, just for the record, are you stipulating that you have evidence that the phrase Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey was written on what's been called a practice note?
No, I'm not going to stipulate to that. I don't.
Well, I mean, I think if you're going to ask her about something that we ought to know exactly what you're
No, fair
referring
enough.
to, because I'm not sure that that's correct at all.
I just didn't want to have to bring it in a long-winded way. There were, in order to properly ask this question, I'm going to have to ask her a couple of foundational questions.
Sure.
Mrs. Ramsey, did it ever come to your attention, through whatever source that's not privileged, like attorney-client privilege, that there may have been what the police have identified as a practice ransom note being written?
Yes, I have heard of a practice ransom note.
All right. Now, can you tell me what it is that you heard was on that practice ransom note?
I don't know that I ever heard exactly what was on the practice ransom note.
Did you at any time ever say to anyone, say Pam Griffin or someone like that, somebody that you knew, that you in fact had written whatever was on the practice ransom note?
No, sir.
Now I'm going to ask you to look at your book here, and page 210. And it's pretty, it's right by the photographs. Right down here, you'll see, by now, anyone who knows John and me, just read the 2 sentences out loud.
By now, anyone who knows John and me will agree that if there's anything we avoid, it's the tabloids. When I pass the magazine rack in the grocery store, I literally try to look the other way.
Out loud.
By now, anyone who knows John and me will agree that if there's anything we avoid, it's the tabloids. When I pass the magazine rack in the grocery store, I literally try to look the other way.
Is that an accurate statement of how you feel?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask the, in fact, that make sure that that was from page 210 of the Death of Innocence paperback edition that Mrs. Ramsey just read. I'm going to have the reporter please mark this as plaintiff's exhibit number 12 for identification, and I'm going to show you this. Okay. Mrs. Ramsey, can you identify plaintiff's exhibit number 12?
It looks like a Xerox copy of Editor and Publisher magazine.
Right. Can you tell me if you recognize the people in the photograph?
I certainly do. Linwood, my husband John, and myself.
Do you remember sitting for that photograph?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you know why that photograph was taken?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell me why?
For this publication.
For the purposes of being on the cover of the publication?
I didn't know at the time it was going to be on the cover necessarily, but yes.
Did you have any idea of what the substance of the article in the publication would be about?
I believed it to be an article about Linwood.
And did you have an opportunity to read the article when it came out?
When it came out, yes, I did.
Do you remember what the article was about?
It was just about Mr. Wood's law practice.
And would you say that this article is consistent with an attorney who challenges the media for misrepresentation?
I got to ask you, Dornay, what does this have to do with anything?
Oh, it has a lot. It does. All right. I'll just.
I mean, why don't you tell us succinctly what this article has to do with Chris Wolf's claims or the defenses to his claims in this libel action?
It has to do with statements made in the Death of Innocence, which I just had Mrs. Ramsey read.
We'll answer questions about that.
Okay. Because the next question is, given the fact that...
That's what I'm trying to ask. I'm trying to ask questions about the book.
Clearly, you gave your support to your attorney for the purposes of this photo to appear on the cover of Editor and Publisher.
Don't.
Okay.
I asked them if they would have the photograph made because the request was made to me. I mean, Dornay, this is ridiculous. We don't need to go into this.
Because, we
Ask
do.
her about the Death of Innocence.
No,
Is there a claim, Chris Wolf claimed to be liable by this article or anything that was said in it?
But it does go
All right,
to
well,
the...
let's go to something else that has relevance.
Right. It goes to the issue of the stated purpose, one of the stated purposes of the book. You have to understand, I have a right to know what purposes were involved in
Why
writing
the
this
editor
book.
and publisher chose to write an article about my law practice and my cases
Right.
has nothing to do with the purposes of John and Patsy Ramsey in writing the book, The Death of Innocence.
Okay, well,
So
I'll
let's move
try
on
and
to
connect
something
it up.
that's relevant.
Now, could you please mark that Plaintiff's Exhibit 13 for identification?
Consistent strong arming, telling him that it has nothing to do because you don't see what it has to do because you won't let him establish a case, because you won't let him make a statement or what have you. You just only question, no foundation allowed to be laid. Then of course you're going to say, oh, there's no connection. But see, here's the thing that you and Patsy and John are in agreement on. You make a statement and you feel like your statement is the end all be all, and it's not. Like, you cannot continue to try to silence people and say, you're not going to ask me this. This has nothing to do with this. No, sir, you're going down the wrong path. That has nothing to do with anything. You can't do that. You need to allow people to establish what they're, or lay the foundation of what they're trying to say. If you have nothing to hide, then that's no problem.
Okay, and I'm going to show this too. Now, Mrs. Ramsey, I'm going to ask you to look at what I have marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 13 for identification and ask you if you recognize it.
No, I don't.
Okay. I'm going to ask you if at any time you ever gave a interview with the National Enquirer.
We spoke with a representative from the National Enquirer as part of some litigation that we were involved with for Burke.
Did you ever agree to be interviewed by the National Enquirer for publication?
Hold on. Tell me how this is relevant to the libel claims of Chris Wolf. Whether John and Patsy Ramsey were interviewed by the National Enquirer.
Because I'm going to ask her about statements that were made in the National Enquirer which relate to the murder in the case. That's why I'm asking her.
Ask her about the statements.
I'm going to first
Why
lay
she
the
did it.
foundation that, in fact, she even had
Let
this
you say
interview.
that she gave the interview. Why she
just
gave the
want her- I
interview is
just-
not relevant.
Well, I'm going to ask, I want to ask her why.
Ask her. Well, I've told her.
We need to first establish, because God forbid we don't first establish where this interview had taken place, right? Because if I don't point to in the book, you guys have made it clear, if I don't point to in the book where the words are, then you guys get up in arms. But now I'm saying, okay, in the National Enquirer, you gave an interview to the National Enquirer. Yes. Or see, now it's back to this piecemeal answering. Oh, well, I gave, maybe I did with, according to a, yes or no. Did somebody get to a representative? Yes, somebody from the National Enquirer. Like, is there a person whose name is the National Enquirer? I'm asking you, a representative from the National Enquirer came to you and asked you questions. You did an interview for them. You sit down or whatever, and it ended up in publication. What do you think a newspaper would come to you for? If the New York Times came or the Wall Street Journal came and said, hey, a representative came to you and said, hey, we want to talk to you about this and that and the third, it's it's an interview. What do you think they're here for?
I've told you that's not relevant to any
No,
claim.
you can't make that objection.
Thank you.
Okay.
In the stipulation.
You can
if-
direct her not to answer. I want you to direct
If you'll let
her
me
not to
finish.
answer. Okay.
Why do you want me to do that?
Because
you mean you come here with a plan to ask irrelevant questions?
Not at all. But quite simply, it's the proper form, because I'm going to ask the question of Mrs. Ramsey and ask her if she'll answer it despite counsel's objection.
She's going to follow. Let's set
Okay.
this ground rule right now. Mrs. Ramsey is going to follow the instructions of her counsel, and you're not going to ask her whether she will or will not.
Oh, no, I will, and I'll tell you why, Mr.
Well,
Wood.
I'll
tell you why, Mr. Wood.
I
I don't think you understand procedure. And
I don't think you understand courtesy. Down here in the South, we don't interrupt people.
Procedure.
You have interrupted.
Give a crap about that, sir. We're in the middle of a proceeding to understand what's going on. See, this, there it goes right there. I don't care nothing about the South. Now, I'm from the South, trust me. But we're not talking about where you're from, and you're not going to force people and say common courtesy, this, that, and the third. No, we're not talking about common courtesy. The law is here to be an arbitrary partner and a mitigating partner. I don't care if I'm from the East Coast or from the West Coast or from the North or the South. The law is here to be a partner in mitigating courteous or non-courteous behavior with the rules of law. That's what it's supposed to be for.
Me repeatedly.
You're using that as a ploy. You're using manners as a ploy.
Interruptions
to
are
avoid these.
interruptions.
All right, you've interrupted me many times. I would say
Not
if you went
repeatedly or
back and
intentionally.
counted my interruptions of you or Mr. Rawls in Chris Wolf's deposition.
You weren't even there, except by telephone.
But yes, but the fact is that no counsel interrupted you to the
This
degree.
man asked proper questions. There was no need to have to go through all this kind of back and forth.
You're wrong.
No, I'm not
You are
wrong.
out of order here, sir. You are
Darnay.
out of order.
Darnay.
Okay?
I'm being patient with you.
No. I'm being patient
Darnay.
with you. This is my deposition. This is not a forum for you to grandstand, to look like a big shot in front of your clients.
Now, Darnay,
That's not what this is.
Darnay, I'm not going to sit here and listen to that. You are not going to characterize what my efforts are for my clients in a deposition as grandstanding or otherwise. That is totally inappropriate. Look, I am trying to make an objection, and if necessary, an instruction, which at the beginning of this deposition, we all agreed was appropriate if you went outside of areas relevant to the claims and defenses in the lawsuit. I happen to believe that if the question you're trying to get to is why did John and/or Patsy Ramsey agree in year 2000 or 2001 to an interview with the National Enquirer, that is not relevant to the claims or defenses in this libel lawsuit. If that's the question, I am going to instruct them not to answer. So why don't you just ask the question and let's get it and leave off all this back and forth, and what I do think might be better described now is somewhat of an ad hominem attack, which is okay if you want to do it, but it's just a waste of all of our time.
Just to clarify one thing, I believe that in the event that the judge were to issue an order for Mrs. Ramsey to compel her to answer certain questions, that the record must reflect the fact that she has refused to answer it, not that her counsel, because the judge will not be ordering you to answer it, they'll be ordering Mrs. Ramsey, and unless the court is clear that it is Mrs. Ramsey who is refusing to answer the question and not yourself, I have to make that as a record, and that is the law, sir.
Darnay, please ask your question, and then I'm going to instruct my client appropriately and if necessary, and then the Judge Carnes will determine the law. Just ask the question, for gosh sakes. Let's get going.
Mrs. Ramsey, do you know why you agreed to a National Enquirer interview?
And I instruct you not to answer on the grounds that that issue is not relevant to any claim or defense in this lawsuit.
Now, Mrs. Ramsey, will you still answer the question?
I instruct you not to respond to that question. She will, in fact, follow her lawyer's instructions, just as any client should appropriately follow her lawyer's instructions, so that she does not waive any right she has to have Judge Carnes review this issue and rule appropriately.
Can I take
Next
that as
question,
a no from
please.
your witness, that she will
You
not?
may take that for exactly what it is. My statement on this record. Next question, please.
All right, Mrs. Ramsey, I'm looking at this interview, and actually, since we have 2 minutes, what I'd like to do is give you an opportunity to review this interview, because I'm going to ask you questions about statements that you allegedly made in the interview. And since we have only a minute to go before we change,
So not really anything real. He just twisted it into a legal framework that he could fit it in, so she didn't have to answer. But not really anything real.
I think this will be an appropriate time
Whatever you like to do.
to break and give you an opportunity to read the interview. Okay? All right.
Video record at 11:35.
This is wild. So going back and looking at these, we can clearly see where exactly there was hesitation or people getting in the way. Clearly see that not only was there sort of stonewalling by the Ramseys themselves, but they learned it from the best. They learned how to legally stonewall from their attorney and to continue to stonewall, which is what they continue to do out past into any other interview, which John continues to do, is stonewall. We can't get any real answers. They don't really give you a legitimate yes or no. It's just, well, I don't know. What do you think? Like, it's just answering a question with a question a lot of times. So that's the video. Let me know what you think. Comment, like, share, subscribe, engage, biggest thing, man, is these are my opinions. Not always right, not always correct, but these are just my opinions on the behaviors and whatnot of the individuals. So like I said, let me know what you think, and until next video, take it easy.